Next activity in the initiation and onboarding process is the stakeholder identification. This is the process of identifying project stakeholders regularly and analyzing and documenting relevant information regarding their interests, involvement, interdependencies, influence, and potential impact on the success of the project. The key benefit of this process is that it enables the project team to identify the appropriate focus for engagement of each stakeholder or group of stakeholders. This process frequently occurs for the first time in a project either prior to or at the same time the project charter is developed and approved. It is repeated as necessary but should be performed at the start of each phase and when a significant change in a project or the organization occurs. In the PM book, the Identify Stakeholders process has the following inputs. First is the project charter. The project charter identifies the key stakeholder list. It may also contain information about the responsibilities of the stakeholders. Second is the business documents. This includes the business case and the benefits management plan. The business case identifies the project objectives and identifies an initial list of stakeholders affected by the project. The benefits management plan describes the expected plan for realizing the benefits claimed in the business case. It may identify the individuals and groups that will benefit from the delivery of the outcomes of the project and are thus considered as stakeholders. Third is the project management plan, which includes the communications management plan as well as a stakeholder engagement plan. Information included in the communications management plan is a source of knowledge about the project's stakeholders. Meanwhile, the stakeholder engagement plan identifies the management strategies and actions required to effectively engage stakeholders. It is unlikely that any project documents will be an input for the initial stakeholder identification. However, stakeholder identification occurs throughout the project. Once the project is past the startup phase, more documents become available and are used throughout the project. Project documents that can be considered as inputs for this process includes the change log, the issue log, and the requirements documentation. Agreements also form as inputs of this process. The agreement can contain references to additional stakeholders. The enterprise environmental factors that can influence this process also include organizational culture, political climate and governance framework, government or industry standards, global, regional, or local trends and practices or habits, and geographic distribution of facilities and resources. The organizational process assets that can influence this process include stakeholder, registered templates and instructions, stakeholder registers from previous projects, and learn lessons repository with information about the preferences, actions, and involvement of stakeholders. As for the tools and techniques, expert judgment is needed. Expertise should be considered from individuals or groups with specialized knowledge or trainings. Data gathering techniques can be used for this process include questionnaires and surveys as well as brainstorming. Questionnaires and surveys can include one-on-one reviews, focus group sessions, or other mass information collection techniques. Brainstorming, as used to identify stakeholders, can include both brainstorming and brainwriting. Data analysis are also recommended to be used as a tool and technique in this process. Data analysis techniques that can be used for this process include stakeholder analysis and document analysis. Stakeholder analysis results in a list of stakeholders and relevant information such as their positions in the organization, the roles in the project, stakes, expectations, attitudes, and in their interest in information about the project. Document analysis assesses the available project documentation and lessons learned from previous projects to identify stakeholders and other supporting information. Another important tool and technique is the data representation. A data representation technique may be used in this process include stakeholder mapping representation. The stakeholder mapping representation is a method of categorizing stakeholders using various methods. Finally, meetings are used to develop an understanding of significant project stakeholders. They can take the form of facilitation workshops, small group guided discussions, and virtual groups using electronics or social media technologies to share ideas and analyze data. As for the outputs of this process, the first is the stakeholder register. This is the main output. This document contains information about identified stakeholders. It includes, but is not limited to, identification information, assessment information, and stakeholder classification. During the first iteration of identifying stakeholders, there will not be any change requests. As stakeholder identification continues throughout the project, new stakeholders or new information about stakeholders may result in a change request to the product, project management plan, or project documents. When stakeholders are identified at the very beginning of a project, there will not be updates to the project management plan. As the project progresses, any change to the project management plan goes through the organization's change control process via a change request. Components that may require a change request for the project management plan include the requirements management plan, communications management plan, the risk management plan, and the stakeholder engagement plan. Project documents that may be updated as a result of carrying out this process include the assumption log, the issue log, and the risk register. This is an example of a stakeholder register, the main output of the stakeholder identification process.